All right, guys, how's everyone doing on this fine Saturday afternoon? I figured I'd do a live stream because today is shopping day. I have to drive 25 miles out to Walmart to buy food and everything. I figured I might as well make the trip worthwhile because I'm just going shopping and that's pretty much it. So before I go shopping, I'm just chilling in the parking lot. Decided to do a live stream because where I live, as you guys know, I pretty much live in the middle of nowhere. So when I do a live stream, I try to do it from home. It doesn't work very well. I have like 2 or 3 bars at most. It's usually 2 bars, and that's really not adequate to do a live stream. That's 2 bars of 4G, because 4G is the only internet source I have where I live. As you can see in the background, there are hills and everything. So yeah, I do live in a rural, remote location. Even this town, this is the big city. It has what? 5,000 people living in it, which I guess is the big city relatively where I live, because I live in a small town with like, I don't even think that even 100 people live where I live. It's just like so remote. I don't even think I live in a town. I think it's more like a village or a hamlet or something. I don't even know. But yeah, obviously, my ability to live stream has been severely limited as a result of that. So now that I'm in town, I have 5 bars. I have a full connection. So yeah, I decided that it's a good time to do a live stream. Uh, since I have to go out 25 miles to go shopping, I might as well also do a live stream for like 30 minutes or whatever. So, we got a few things to talk about today. First, I'm going to give a channel update because I haven't give you guys an update on this channel for a while, and I didn't feel like making a separate video, so this is going to be the update. So, this is probably going to be the last time you see the name One Up Chuck on the channel. I'm doing another name change. I know, like it's pretty much a meme at this point. How many times am I gonna change my name, right? First, it was MrNoobTubeGamer, which was the most common name that people still refer to me as. People still call me NoobTube, MrNoobTubeGamer. I created that username when I was like 14, 15, so I kind of like wanted to step away from that. So, well, this is back when I was still trolling with everyone. I was still just making a joke out of everything. So I called myself the Console King, and that is probably another, yeah, that's another memorable name that I went by that people still call me to this day, the Console King. That was a very interesting time, to say the least. And then I decided to change my name to, what was it, 8-Bit Politics. I tried to do like a whole podcasting thing. It didn't work out. My channel, the views and the subscribers stagnated significantly, and yeah, it was really bad. I believe it was like early 2018. I made a 3,000 subscriber special video, right? And then I dropped down to like 2,900. Like people were just unsubscribing. It was a really bad time for my YouTube channel. People were just unsubscribing left from right, and it was my own fault because I made uninteresting content. Let's be honest. It was dry and boring as shit. So people didn't want to watch it. People didn't want to tune in. I tried to do like a podcasting thing. It didn't work out. Right? It was a total and complete failure. So I changed my name again to One Up Chuck, which it sounds like you want to puke when you watch my videos. One Up Chuck, like Up Chuck is vomiting. So I guess that's another thing. People want to throw up whenever they watch my videos, whenever they see my face on camera, right, Sierra? I know you're watching. That's exactly how you feel when you watch my videos, when you see my ugly, disgusting face, right? Yeah. So I'm going to change my name again. I'm not exactly... I have a few names narrowed down, but I'm not quite sure exactly what I'm going to change the name exactly to. I do know what I want to do, though. I want to not merge the channels together, because you know how I have a gaming channel where I talk about video games, and then I also have a film channel, I have a music channel, and I also have a channel where I talk about, like, just technology as a whole, so like computers, phones, and even like social media. I want to combine all that into one, not into one YouTube channel, but one entity, if that makes sense. Even though the actual channels will be separate, I'm still gonna like be referred to as one thing for those channels. You'll see what I mean when I actually finalize all that, but that's where things are headed right now. I'm also really changing the type of content that you see on this channel. It used to be mostly like, what have I been doing lately? Like just commentaries with gameplay in the background. I'm still gonna do that when I don't feel like making a whole video with a script and everything, and I just want to share my unscripted thoughts on something specific. But I'm gonna shift towards scripted content, towards documentary type content related to video games in this channel. One such video that is in the works and is almost done is actually going to be about the very first video game that was ever created back in 1950, so almost 70 years ago, and something that not too many people know about or are aware about, even though it is one of the biggest innovations ever, because it was the world's first video game. It was almost 70 years ago, which is crazy to think that it's been that long. When the first video game was created, Harry Truman was president of the United States. We were just entering the Korean War. Wow, it just blows your mind when you really like think about that. So yeah, we'll do a little showcase video on the world's first video game. I want to make like documentary type videos in the future. So I have a few other things lined up. The video game crash of 1977, which was the first video game crash that ever happened that not too many people are aware of. And I'm also going to talk about the well-known crash of 1983, which there are a lot of misconceptions about how that crash went about. People think it's because of E.T. and Pac-Man on the Atari, like these two specific games that just crashed the entire industry. It's a lot more complicated, and it's a lot more complex than how people portray it. So those are the three documentary type things that I'm working on. Although they might not be like actual documentaries, because that requires like too much, like I'm not really that great at editing and doing all that kind of stuff. So it's just going to be more like, you'll see what I mean when you actually see it. It's going to be kind of like a mixture of a documentary and a commentary. So it's going to be somewhere in between that. But I think the future of this channel is looking good. I just need to find myself creatively, because let's just face it, the past year and a half, this channel has sucked. I had so much potential when I decided to stop being the console king. And, that time, and it was the summer of 2017, that was probably like the best summer of my life. It has nothing to do with YouTube. But, the YouTube channel was doing very well. I got like 5,000 views, 10,000 views every video. It was like, it was amazing. I was getting so many views. My channel was blowing up, and it just went downhill, because it's my own fault, right? Let's just face it. It's my own fault that happened. But, yeah, that was a really good summer. I had so many awesome memories with my friends and everything. It was just great. Now here I am sitting in a Walmart parking lot because I got nothing to do. I got to go shopping, and I'm doing a live stream right now. So yeah, things have definitely winded down a little bit over the years, especially with my YouTube channel, where I'm lucky to get 100 views on a video, which is, let's just face it, I'm not even gonna hide it, it's really sad that's the state of my channel right now. So that's the state of my YouTube channel. Let's talk about the state of the gaming industry. That's really the main purpose of this live stream in the first place. So a year ago, I made a similar live stream where I spent like an hour or so talking about the current state of the video game industry and what I think the future holds, and what will happen. So we have a lot of things to talk about. I usually do it in June, shortly after E3, so that's what I did last year. So we're going to talk about E3, and we're going to talk about just where the video game industry stands right now, because there are, it's definitely interesting. There are new things coming in. You have streaming services, you have VR, which is another thing. So the video game industry is definitely changing. So we're going to go over E3 first, right? Because that's usually the showcase of what's to come. So that's a good indicator of where things are headed, typically, I guess. So we're gonna talk about the press conferences, not all of them, because it's kind of tedious. Like, we're not going to talk about Bethesda's press conference, which is just downright pathetic. Bethesda has no reason to have an E3 press conference. I think the main thing they showed off Wolfenstein, and then the whole showcase was focused on mobile games, and you had the people in the crowd cheering like they're excited. Yeah, Elder Scrolls Blades on the Nintendo Switch. We're so excited. Like, people are screaming and going nuts like the Elder Scrolls 6 was coming out. I feel like Bethesda hired these people to cheer every time they made an announcement, as stupid as it is. Like, I think that's what's going on here. I think Bethesda knows that nobody gives a crap about their crappy mobile games. It's not really worthy of an E3 showcase. So they hired a whole bunch of people to sit in the crowd and cheer and scream and be excited. But there's really nothing to be excited about when it comes to Bethesda. Fallout 76 is a total mess. They had that whole commercial, the whole trailer about Fallout 76. What's to come? They have a battle royale mode which is live now. I think they came out with it like right when they did the E3 thing. So you have a battle royale mode. I can't imagine playing battle royale with those clunky, outdated shooting mechanics. It's just Sierra Air. There's a kid locked in your trunk. Please don't tell anyone. Yeah, there's a kid. You hear the screaming? Hey, quiet. No, there's no kid in my trunk as far as I know. Um, but what was I even saying? Oh yeah, Bethesda. It was just a shitty press conference. Nobody cares about it. Bethesda is just Fallout 76 I can't imagine playing that game again. I pretty much got it for free, but just even installing the giant update with my slow internet is not even worth my time and effort. So I don't care if they add in NPCs. Oh, voiced NPCs, you have voice dialogue and you have all this stuff. I don't care. It doesn't mean anything to me. I don't care if they can fix the game as much as they can, but the type of game Fallout 76, it's literally Fallout 4 in an online world, and I feel like they could try to make the world fleshed out as much as possible, but I don't think the creation engine and a live service game really mesh together very well because the shooting mechanics are so primitive, even more primitive than like your typical MMO game where the mechanics are dumbed down very significantly. But at least you actually have you know what you're getting. Fallout, it's not an MMO. 76 is not an MMO, but it's also not like really a Fallout game. So it's like in this weird limbo. It's also not a survival, open world survival game because you get punished for shooting people. So I don't know what they're trying to sell to me, right? I still don't get it. And they keep coming out with these updates. Obviously, that's just how the games as a service model works. The game comes out broken and then they fix it later. So as far as games as a service is concerned, it just keeps heading more and more and more towards that direction of everything becoming a live service. It's just that it started that way in the 7th generation, and now it's like blown up significantly to the point where it's just it's a little bit too much to deal with, I'd say, because it's just like I remember back in the day where things were just so much more simple, right? You buy a game, it would cost $60, whatever, but you would get the entire game, the entire experience, and that's it. Later down the line, they started selling DLC, but in a lot of cases, it was actually a full expansion of the original game. So that was acceptable. Like in Oblivion, they had a Shivering Isles DLC, which was like a huge expansion of Oblivion. So most people were like, yeah, it's worth the extra $15-$20, whatever they were charging. But with a lot of the DLC they're selling now, like with Call of Duty Black Ops 4 and the other Call of Duty games, the other shooting games, a lot of the DLC that they sell is just like not worth it. You get $15 for what, 4 maps? That's just very underwhelming. I remember Battlefield Bad Company 2 back in the day. You'd get the Vietnam expansion for $15, and it was just like a totally brand new experience. You had new maps, new weapons, new everything. It was just like amazing. And now they're moving towards the trend of never mind DLC, never mind all of that. Every game, even if you pay $60 full price for it, is treated like a free-to-play game with the monetization and with the microtransactions and all that. It's just... Why do you think I don't play video games anymore? I talk about video games more than I play them. That's the sad truth about this whole thing. I talk about video games on YouTube and Twitter and whatever more than I'm actually playing them. Because playing a video game feels more like a full-time job these days than it is actually enjoying yourself and having fun. Because they treat it like a job. You have to grind and grind and grind, do the same thing over and over again, and it's just like you're in a rut. You're just doing the same thing nonstop over and over and over and over again to get this one item that someone else is just going to get with their mom's credit card. They're going to buy the microtransactions, and they're going to get all the items that you spent hundreds of hours obtaining. At the end of the day, those items you spent countless hours obtaining are virtual. They mean absolutely nothing in the real world. They mean absolutely nothing, especially considering that one day that game is going to shut down and all the time you spent is going to be for nothing. Just be honest. Be honest with yourself. If you're the type of person that plays these types of games, that plays like Anthem, Division, and then these other cookie cutter, generic looter shooter games, how much of the actual like experience are you actually like enjoying yourself? You're like, wow, this is so much fun, this is so awesome, compared to you just like, okay, let's keep doing the same mission over and over and over again. Let's get this, to get this one item that I want to level up, and you know what I mean? Like, my friend is obsessed with Destiny. I'm like, how are you obsessed with this game? This game is terrible. Most of the time, you're just doing the same stuff over and over and over and over and over again. I don't know how people think this stuff is good. People love it. They eat it up. I guess it's like the dopamine in your brain. It like goes off when you accomplish something, right? Instead of doing real life accomplishments in the real world, we have virtual accomplishments. We're all about trophy hunting, achievement hunting, getting 100%. And what does that mean? Oh, you're good at video games. Means nothing in the real world. This is coming from someone who talks about video games, who makes money talking about video games. Not a lot of money, granted, but still, I spend a significant amount of time talking about video games, and that alone is a trivial topic. Let's face it. Has absolutely no bearing in the real world, and I'm completely self-aware of that fact. That's why I'm going to shift more towards things that actually matter, like politics and all that. I'm obviously going to keep that separate, but I really want to focus on that more than this, because I have these notes taken, right? I have all these notes for my live stream to talk about everything that's going on in video games, and I'm just thinking to myself, why? Why does it matter? Why am I even doing this? It's a really good question to ask. It's a really good question to ask myself. This stuff has just no... It's a hobby, right? Everyone has a hobby, so I guess, talking about it and analyzing certain things, I guess it's fun, but every now and then I question myself, why do I dedicate more time than I should on these trivial topics that have no importance in the real world, right? That's just what I'm thinking. That's really the main reason why you haven't seen that much videos lately. I'm just like, I'm doing this, and I'm going to try to rebrand the channel. I'm going to give it one more go. But I'm going to be honest with you, if this one last thing fails, if it doesn't succeed and people just, if I just fade into obscurity once again, then I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, the video game community is probably one of the most cringeworthy, toxic, shitty communities, honestly. One of the shittiest communities I've ever seen on the internet. And you have a lot of passionate people who, a lot of people who just like to talk about video games and just like to talk about their hobby and have a shared interest. But a lot of it, and a huge portion of it, is just people taking it so goddamn seriously. It's just... This is coming from someone that is doing a live stream talking about video games. So again, I am completely self-aware about what I'm saying because it applies to me as well. But then you have these people who are just like, they're like video game nationalists, if that makes sense. Like people who are just, they are like loyal to a specific piece of plastic, to a brand. It's like their national identity. I am a PlayStation gamer. I am an Xbox gamer. I am a PC gamer. Seriously, dude? Like, people like JTech they're pathetic. Let's just face it, these people are pathetic, downright pathetic, that they spend so much time dedicated on their loyalty, proclaiming plastic supremacy, is what I like to call it. Because it sounds so ridiculous, because it is. It's just... It's beyond me why there's so many people like that. Right? It's just... There's crappy music playing. But I just don't get it. I don't get it. So that's where my head is right now. I'm gonna try to do things a little differently on this channel, but if it fails again, if people still don't watch, right now in this live stream I have one viewer, it's probably Sierra. because he's my biggest fan. If it just fails and people still don't care and still don't want to watch, then I think I'm going to hang it up. Because quite honestly, I'm having very little enjoyment and fulfillment out of all of this. Out of this channel and making these videos. It just does nothing for me. I'm only doing this now because I just have so much time to kill, and I really don't have anything else to do right now. So that's why I'm doing it in the first place. And it's the only instance where I actually have like 5 bars, so I could actually do a live stream, because where I live I can't even do a live stream because the internet is so crappy. It's like third world internet. So bad. Yeah, that internet is so bad where I live. Bullet Barry was posting on Twitter a few months ago, and I was laughing at it because he was posting about, yeah, he's like traveling the world right now. Good for him. He's actually doing something. He's traveling to Vietnam. He traveled to the UK a few months ago. He's like traveling all over the place. When he went to Vietnam, he posted like, I'm gonna try to make a video for you guys, but my internet is so bad. And he posts a screenshot of his internet connection, and it's 13 megabits a second. And I'm like, you're lucky. I get like, you know what my internet speed is? 3 megabits. That's my internet connection. I get 3 megabits per second. Yeah. So that's one reason. Also, like, I don't really... I don't know. Let's just get into this because I promised I would do it, and I'm a man of my word. So, let's get on with it. So, yeah, overall E3 2019 was very underwhelming. We talked about Bethesda, and then we went on a whole rant about just video games, I guess, just how stupid it is to talk about video games while I'm talking about video games at the same time. I'm completely self-aware of my hypocrisy, but yeah. So you had Bethesda, EA. They showed off the Star Wars game. Ubisoft had a press conference. It was just, I can't imagine people actually sit through all the. I'll be honest with you. I did not sit through. The only press conference I sat through completely was Microsoft's, which I have quite a bit to talk about. But most of these I can't imagine people sitting through all this crap. They have the PC gaming press conference. Like, that's just, ugh. It's just so boring. It's so boring. And there's no news, like, nothing important that you get out of it. Like, there's no huge announcements. Well, EA, they announced that Star Wars game. That was, like, their big thing. Okay. I can't really remember too much else that they revealed over there at EA. Ubisoft, Watch Dogs Legion was their big thing. Let's see if the new Watch Dogs succeeds any more than the first two did, which were very underwhelming for most people. So we'll see how that goes. And then I guess we'll get into the main event. The 3 big conferences. You had Microsoft's conference, Nintendo's conference, and you had Stadia. So we'll talk about all 3 of those. So let's start off with Microsoft, because that's the one I actually sat through, and I probably have the most to say about it. So we'll talk about that. So Microsoft's press conference, in one word, is just underwhelming. That's one word I could really use to describe Microsoft's live stream, press conference, whatever you want to call it. It was just... And you wonder why Sony didn't show up for E3, because there's nothing to talk about, right? And people say E3 is dying. They might be right. I also think it's mostly the fact that it's that time of the generation where we're really at the tail end, but they're not quite ready to showcase the new consoles, but they're also like they don't have a lot of games coming out in the current consoles either. So there's really not much to talk about, and Microsoft really demonstrated that in their conference. 6 years later, after this console came out, Microsoft still hasn't fulfilled their promises of, having compelling first-party experiences on their console, and they're focusing on delivering services opposed to consoles. And let's talk about that. So Microsoft's whole thing was talking about how the Xbox platform is being able to play everywhere, anywhere, at any time, no matter what you play on. It's nonsense, because People are praising Microsoft. They're a business at the end of the day, right? They see they at the end of the day, they cannot compete with Sony no matter how hard they try. That is why they're not going third party, but they're diversifying. I guess that's a good way to say it. They're diversifying their platform to be more than just one specific hardware. So if you're on PC, you can play all the Xbox games, and Xbox Game Pass is their digital subscription. So services, services, services. That's pretty much the entire future of the industry in one word is services. It's they want to sell you a service, and that's really the economy. We're really right now we're experiencing a new industrial revolution, right? The first industrial revolution was manufacturing, right? Where you had these products that really they all had to be manufactured by hand, and it took them so long to be manufactured, and the supply and demand was really out of balance because the demand, with the first industrial revolution, demand and supply went up so much that we really transformed from an agricultural focused economy to an industrial economy. So that was the first industrial revolution, is manufacturing and factories and all that. The second industrial revolution was the train, so the steel mills and all that, to make train tracks. The locomotive, that was the second industrial revolution. It changed transport forever, and going from one city to the other became so much faster than it had been previously, where you had to go on horseback or whatever, and that completely changed the way the economy happened, because you can go from place to place much faster than you had been able to previously. Going from one city to this another city would go from taking like a fortnight to, I don't mean the shitty game Fortnite, I mean like a fortnight, like 2 weeks, from a fortnight to a few days. So it really changed the way that the economy worked. Third industrial revolution was automobiles, which we still see this to this day. I mean, I'm in an automobile right now. Everything around me is an automobile. Cars everywhere. And it completely changed the way the economy functioned as well. People being able to get from place to place much faster, having to build bridges, having to build tunnels, just trying to, having to interconnect places much more than they ever had to. So infrastructure changed, the overall economy changed, everything as we know it fundamentally changed when the automobile was introduced in the 30s. This new industrial revolution that we're seeing right now, and this goes far beyond video games, is the digital industrial revolution, as I like to call it, because it started off with the internet, being able to deliver products and services instantly, digitally. It completely changed the way you look at music streaming, TV streaming. The TV industry is fundamentally changing. The music industry has fundamentally changed since the introduction of iTunes and now it's Spotify. Now you're streaming. So this is the new revolution, and in this new revolution, you're having a lot less of those manufacturing jobs that were created by the hundreds of thousands and probably millions in the first industrial revolution. All these new factory jobs that were created. Now those jobs are going away because it makes a lot more sense. It's a lot more profitable in the long run to sell to have these recurring monthly payments, these services that they're selling to you, whether it's Spotify Premium, Apple Music, Xbox Game Pass, Google Stadia. You see where I'm getting at here? So yeah, the video game industry is fundamentally changing, but that's also because the economy as we know it is also fundamentally changing. So they're trying to head towards that direction of services, of streaming and all that. I'm very skeptical if that model of business would translate very well to the video game industry, right? And I know people are thinking like, are you stuck in the past? You're like, what? Why would you say something like that? It's worked for TV, it's worked for music, it's worked for everything else. But the thing is, the video game industry is like nothing we've ever seen before, right? It's a form of entertainment that is just completely unique, that really can't be directly compared to the other forms of media. Like with music, you listen to a song, right? from 2 minutes to 5 minutes at length, typically, right? You listen to that song, and you can listen to it over and over and over and over again, seamlessly on a streaming service. And with TV shows, you can watch a TV show, whatever, watch a movie. With video games, I don't know if streaming can really translate very well into the video game industry. And we'll talk about Stadia, because Stadia, and I know they're also doing xCloud. I don't know if that is really the future. I'm very skeptical of that. And hear me out, because I've said this in previous videos, and you could go back and go see more in depth about why I believe that these streaming services are not the future. But really, I don't see xCloud and Stadia taking over the entire industry, like becoming the new top way, like the big way to play video games, like bigger than consoles, bigger than PC, bigger than everything else. I just don't see that happening. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't see that happening at all. So I'll get into that a little bit later, but I want to finish talking about Microsoft. I know I'm like scattered all over the place, but this is the thing about Microsoft. They see that services are the future. So they're focusing on xCloud, they're focusing on Game Pass, they're focusing on Xbox Live Gold. Here's the thing, Microsoft, people are praising Microsoft, thinking that what they're doing is smart. I think it's only smart. I think it's only going to work in the future if they merge Xbox and PC into one platform. That's the only way it's going to work. Have the new Xbox console be more like an Alienware Alpha than an actual traditional console. I mean, still have those aspects of the Xbox traditional console that you do have games and everything like that. Have a streamlined gaming experience. Not like, I'm not talking about upgrading like the Alienware Alpha, but I'm saying Alpha in the terms of like, instead of being a console, it's more like a miniature PC. I could see the new Xbox Project Scarlet, having mod support, having all the stuff that is traditionally on PC, but in a streamlined console experience, while simultaneously offering all their exclusive games to PC players. Because at the end of the day, what is Windows? A Microsoft product. So Microsoft doesn't see it as them going third party. They don't see it as them waving the white flag in the console war. But they do see that the not just the video game industry, but the entire economy as we know it is fundamentally shifting from a product economy to a service economy. And you see that every day with all these manufacturing jobs going away, automation, and just overall products, like actual products, being less profitable than recurring monthly services. So that's why I think at the end of the day, that's why Microsoft is doing this. They also have struggled to really have a significant footing in the console market. I mean, don't get me wrong, 40 million units is nothing to completely scoff at, but compared to the PlayStation, it's just Microsoft, the Xbox got completely blown out of the water this generation. Last generation, they did really good. First generation that they were in was the 6th generation. They barely made a dent. So they're kind of seeing, like, it's not as profitable as this other stuff that we could be doing. The Game Pass, the xCloud, streaming and all that. I think one day Game Pass and xCloud, whatever they decide to call xCloud, are going to eventually, not now, but in the future, become one platform. So you know how PlayStation Now, you have the streaming service, right? But you can also download the games. I think they're going to do the same thing with the Game Pass and xCloud. They're going to kind of merge into one thing together. I think selling them as separate services in the long term is not really a good idea. I don't think it makes a lot of sense in the long run. And also having Game Pass PC and Game Pass Xbox as two separate services, although they do bundle it together. But really, at the end of the day, you're making it... There's no reason to have an Xbox and a PC. You can make the case that owning an Xbox, is if you're a console gamer first and foremost, that buying an Xbox is still worthwhile, even though they're putting all their games on PC, because a lot of the people who would buy an Xbox have no interest in playing on PC anyway, so putting their games on PC, no harm done, right? So I can kind of see that argument, but having them, still billing them as separate entities, like Xbox on the Xbox and Xbox on the PC. So you have Game Pass on the PC, Game Pass on the Xbox One, completely different games, completely different services, although they're fundamentally the same thing, but they're still separate entities. I think Microsoft should and will in the next few years, merge the Xbox console and PC platform into one. And this is the downside of them moving towards this direction. Xbox players on the PC do not have to pay $60 a year for gold, and they probably never will. However, if you're on the Xbox console, you still are required to have gold on in order to play your games online on the Xbox One console. That's got to change, because people are going to be like, wow, PC gamers are getting better treatment than the people who actually buy your console and who are honestly, who are supporting you more directly than these PC players, because they're selling their games on Steam now, while if you buy the game on Xbox, you're supporting Microsoft directly, because they don't have to share their profits with another store. It's their store, the Microsoft store. And also, you're buying their console, which they make money off of indirectly through software. I feel like if they continue to separate the console and PC experience, that's going to significantly hurt their console brand, and that's going to lose them a lot of money, I think, if they don't merge the two together. So I think they really need to do that, and I don't think that's fundamentally a bad thing, but let's just face it. Microsoft is treating their console players as second-class citizens. Their PC players are getting first-class treatment. They're getting all the games. They're getting the entire online experience without having to pay $60 a year, while the console gamers, right, they have to pay the $60 a year subscription in order to have the privilege of playing their games online. So Microsoft's going to have to change the way they do business if they really want to continue to have the loyalty and support of their consumers, because that's very important at the end of the day. I think if they continue to require you to have Xbox Gold in order to play games online come their next console, while on PC you do not have to, I think there's going to be a mass exodus for the Xbox platform overall, and I think they're not going to make as much money as they think they are. I think it's going to hurt them in the long run if that's their plan. But I think and I hope that their plan is to eventually and inevitably merge those two things together, to merge the PC and Xbox. So right now they have Game Pass Ultimate. I think Game Pass Ultimate will be Game Pass in the future. That will be Game Pass. Like, there will be one subscription for both, but the idea is to not have you have both, right? You either play Xbox on the PC or Xbox on the console, but it's one or the other. Really, there's no reason to do both, because the same games are available, the same service, everything, except console gamers on top of that have to pay $60 a year to play games online. That's got to change. But moving on from that, so we talked about Xbox Game Pass. I think it's a good value, though. I personally don't use it because it requires a lot of downloading, and as you guys know, my downloading situation is not very good. So I just stay away from these streaming downloading services. I just buy games outright if I want to play them, because that's just what I do. The only Game Vault service I have is Origin Access. That was $30 a year, though, which is, cheaper than Xbox Game Pass, and there are actually more games that I play on that than on Xbox Game Pass, so that's why I have that. So we talked about that. I think we should be more in depth about streaming. Oh, by the way, I've seen this a lot. People talking about Sony being no showing E3. This is why Sony didn't show up for E3. I just talked about the Microsoft. The two most important things about Microsoft's press conference, the two biggest news stories regarding that press conference, was two things. Their new console coming out next year, which they barely gave us any information about, like pricing or anything like that, so it's just a little teaser. And also, a new Halo game is going to launch with that new Xbox. Okay. And we didn't really get much. We got a little trailer. We got a little tidbit. We didn't really get a lot. So what would Sony would have done? Maybe show off The Last of Us 2? They don't really have too much games coming out. They have The Last of Us 2, Ghost of Tsushima, which is probably not even, playable yet. Can someone help me here? What else does Sony have coming out in the future? Last of Us 2, Ghost of I still can't pronounce it. Tsushima, I think that's how you pronounce it. Ghost of Tsushima. Is that it? I'm pretty sure that's it. So they would have showed off those two games. Ghost of Tsushima, possibly, and Last of Us 2, okay? And then maybe they would have given a little teaser about the PlayStation 5, a little, but they're not ready to showcase the PS5, clearly. What else would it maybe show off like a Modern Warfare 4 new Modern Warfare trailer, and that would have been it. People were bitching and complaining about how boring the Xbox conference was, and it truly was. But can you imagine how boring it would have been if Sony had a conference? They have nothing to show. They have nothing to show off. So people are complaining about Sony not showing up for E3, but can you blame them if they have nothing? You know, like I said earlier in the stream, now new people are tuning in. So like I said earlier, if you didn't see, I was talking about how with the live streams, right? Like with these E3 press conferences, people talking about how E3 is dead and E3 this year was like very insignificant. That's how it always is, man. Like when you're towards the end of the generation, where not only do you have no new games coming out really in the future because you're focusing on the new console, but you also are not ready to show off the new console at the same time, then what do you expect them to show off? So Sony skipping E3 was probably a good decision on their part. Microsoft did show up at E3, but what did they really have? You had the Minecraft dungeon game. It was really all about Game Pass, Game Pass, Game Pass. All these games were coming out on Game Pass, Game Pass, Game Pass. We have a new console coming out in a year and a half. It's coming, and that's it. That's it. That's all they did. It's not as bad as their Connect conference in 2010. That's probably one of the worst E3 conferences I have ever had the unfortunate experience of tuning in and watching, sitting through the whole thing. It's terrible. But yeah, that's Xbox. Now we're talking about Nintendo. So people said Nintendo won E3. Okay. And I want you to let me know in the comments if you think Nintendo won E3. Because, in my opinion, okay, so maybe Nintendo did win E3, but that's kind of like being the least smelly pile of shit. You know what I mean? Like, is that really an accomplishment? Because E3 overall was underwhelming. Like I said, it's obviously it makes sense because, you know, we're at that time of the generation where things are kind of winding down and they're not coming out with too many games because they're focusing on the new generation. But they're also way far off to actually show off too much stuff about the new generation of consoles. So all these press conferences were shit because all these games that they're showcasing, they're dedicating most of their resources, first party and third party. They're really trying to focus on games coming out on the new generation. Balin says, I gave up on consoles when I realized that Sony and Microsoft weren't going to give people the option to play games at 1080p 60 frames per second. And I couldn't care less about 4K. Good thing that you mentioned that, because so apparently the new generation of consoles, the PlayStation 5 and the new Xbox, are talking about 4K 120 frames per second. These are apparently like really beefy consoles that are going to be like really like blow your mind. But at the end of the day, if you care so much about graphical fidelity, if you care so much about the best performance, you're going to go on PC, aren't you? Like, why are you going to go on console, right? PC is really the place to go, is the definitive platform, the definitive experience. If you're really like, if frame rate, if resolution, if all that is really your most important aspect when it comes to gaming, if that's really your most important thing on your checklist when you're talking about playing games and which platform to game on, then PC is always, no matter what, even if they release these incredibly powerful consoles, PC is still going to be the definitive gaming experience. That's just the way it is. And anyone watching, did you guys actually watch that PC gaming conference? I don't even know anything that was revealed at that conference because I just didn't even care about that. I didn't even hear anything coming out from that. So if there's actually anything cool that was on that show, every year though, it's like the worst conference of the entire E3. I don't know why they keep doing it. It's just so boring. It's just nothing but crappy indie games that nobody cares about. Then again, Microsoft's whole E3 conference was crappy indie games that nobody cares about. So I guess that's just the way things are going now. I don't know. But let's talk about Nintendo. And people might take this the wrong way, but Nintendo won E3. But is that really something to brag about? Because E3 overall was shit. It was so underwhelming. I guess it was, maybe it was fun for the people who were actually there and got to, like, actually play the games, at the actual booth, because at the end of the day, that's kind of like what E3 is meant to be, like an electronic showcase where consumers travel from around the world and they play the games early and they get to have their impressions on products coming out soon. That's really how E3 started, but then it became this like media conference thing where like it's where things get announced and where things like where you look forward to things that are coming out in the future. But there's nothing to showcase. So what did Nintendo have to showcase? Okay, let's be honest. Not much. The two big things that Nintendo had, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the new Zelda game that there's no gameplay or no trail, which I don't expect them to do because they just came out. Like it's probably not in a playable state, but they announced that's their big announcement. But it's like, why should I care about this when we're probably not going to get it for another 3 years minimum, or maybe 2 years if we're lucky. Nintendo was just talking about how they don't rush their games, and they don't do, which I admire and respect, but also they don't really have too many games coming out. Like there's that, and The Witcher 3 on the Nintendo Switch. Congratulations! You got The Witcher 3, a game that most people have played 5 times over already. You get to play it. Oh no, but it's different because you get to play it on the go. You get to play it portably. Okay. Is that really like something that I'm supposed to like go crazy about? Witcher 3 is on the Switch. Nintendo Switch finally has a game that everyone else has been able to play for the past 5 years, but 4 years, whatever. And that's something to celebrate. That's like Nintendo gamers are high-fiving each other like, yeah, we got The Witcher. What? Seriously? Nintendo is that press conference was pretty underwhelming in my opinion, but I guess people were excited about it because you have a game that's not even going to be playable or even going to come out for another 3 or 4 years. That's their big announcement. Okay. Because usually it takes about 5 or 6 years for every new Zelda game to come out, like big game. Okay, they got that. A port of a game that everyone's played already, Witcher 3. Luigi's Mansion 3, so more of the same. No More Heroes 3. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. A lot of threes with Nintendo's conference. I guess that's cool, but does that really feel like I'm not too optimistic about the Switch. I made that very clear. Like, the Nintendo Switch has been out for 2 years, and it's already winding down. You know why, right? Because when Nintendo Switch first came out, back in 2017, it's like, oh my god, the Switch has so many games. You got Mario Odyssey, you have Zelda, you have Mario Kart, you have Smash Brothers. That's because, well, at least half of those games that I mentioned were ports of games that were already out in the Wii U, but nobody played the Wii U, so they were able to get away with that. They were able to be treated as new games, like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which was like highly based off of the last Super Smash Bros., but also like a compilation, basically. But oh yeah, that was another thing they showed off. Banjo and Kazooie are gonna be in Smash Brothers. Oh my god, thank you, Microsoft. Thank you, Phil Spencer. Phil Spencer is like a god. He's like the Gabe Newell of console gaming. Balin says, did you hear that an EA rep called loot boxes surprise mechanics in a meeting with the UK Parliament about gambling in video games? We're going to talk about that. I'm just going to finish up this thought right here. Overall, Nintendo was a very underwhelming press conference. And the future of Nintendo Switch is not very promising. Let's just face it. Apparently a Switch Mini was leaked out. I think that's honestly the only thing that could save the Switch, because right now, as an actual handheld console, the Nintendo Switch is pathetic. As a home console, the Nintendo Switch is pathetic. And I'm going to explain that, okay? I've said this before. This is not like me just shitting on Nintendo and just hating on Nintendo. When I think of a handheld console, okay, I think of the DS, I think of the 3DS, I think of the PSP. I think of systems that were able to fit in your pocket, that you were actually able to carry around with you on the go, as opposed to this giant thing that you can, carry around in a knapsack, sure. But really, is it like, it's less portable than the Sega Game Gear. You know what I mean? And it has a 2-hour battery life. And that's considered a handheld. That's considered portable these days. The standards have really gone down, haven't they? And as far as an actual console, third-party support, very underwhelming. If your biggest accomplishment for your third-party support is having a 4-year-old game that everyone has already played 5 times over, The Witcher 3, then you got a problem. Because it's very underpowered. It can't keep up with the original PlayStation 4. Once the PlayStation 5 comes out, the Nintendo Switch is going to be completely obliterated. Okay, let's just face that. Okay, that's what's going to happen. Their only hope is to make they could try to make a more powerful version, but at the end of the day, it's still not going to hold up to the PS5, so it's not even worth bothering. Make a more portable, a slimmer version, more battery life. Other than that, the Switch is going to be dead within the next year or two. I can guarantee you that. As far as games as a service concerned, because Balin was asking me that question earlier about what I think about loot boxes being referred to as surprise mechanics. I was talking earlier about how everything is a service, games is a service, every game you come out with is a service. When Bethesda, a studio that is Bethesda Game Studios, which is known for its critically acclaimed single-player experience, and that is what it's famous for, even they tried to dabble in games as a service with that abysmal game Fallout 76. If that doesn't tell you where the industry is headed, I don't know what will. So, yeah, you just have microtransactions and loot boxes up the ass. It's just terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Like I said earlier, I remember back at the time where you would pay $60 maybe, maybe you would pay a little bit more if you want to also buy expansions. You also called them fun and ethical, not kidding. Yeah, I did see that. I was going to make a video about that, but I guess I just got caught up on other things. But yeah, when it comes to that, I made it very clear that I think that if gambling is going to be regulated, then I think loot boxes should be as well, because loot boxes and gambling are one and the same. They're not fun surprise mechanics. Are they fun? They're definitely surprising to the mother that checks their bank statement when they see $1,000 on what is it, FIFA points or NBA points or whatever, battle passes, V-Bucks. Yeah, that'll be a surprise to the mother's credit card account to when she looks at the bank statement every month. But that's the only thing surprising about these loot boxes. Another thing surprising is how people are just so what's the word I'm looking for? They're okay with it. Like, they don't see it as a problem. It's just, they've grown accustomed to it, to these loot boxes, to just paying so much money to get the full gaming experience. And you don't even know if you're going to actually get it. That's the thing about loot boxes, okay? You could say microtransactions and DLC. And, that was a big argument back in, 2011, 2012, is, whether or not we're headed towards a direction where on-disc DLC... I remember that was a huge thing with Mass Effect 3, where they would come out with DLC the day the game came out, and it was on the actual disc. It was locked onto the disc, but you had to go behind a paywall in order to get that content. So they've been doing this shit for years, okay? The loot boxes are nothing new. Like, in terms of the game publishers trying to just nickel and dime you as much as they can, this is nothing new. Before these microtransactions and before all that even came out, they've been trying to screw you over for as long as they were able to. As soon as the internet came out, boom, trying to get as much money as you as they could, right? That's just, it started off with MMOs. That was the really big thing. That was really the first time they did that. And now it's just blown out of proportion. There's a whole generation of kids now that has grown up playing games with loot boxes, and they think it's normal. Exactly. These kids who are 9 or 10 years old right now, that means they were born when? 2009, 2010? They don't know gaming without loot boxes. When loot boxes first started becoming a thing, in 2012, 2013, that's when it really started taking off, with GTA 5 and everything, these full $60 games having microtransactions everywhere, loot boxes everywhere. They were 4 or 5 years old, these kids? So they do not know a world without loot boxes. That's the sad thing about it. They do not know a world where you can just put the game in the disc, and then that's the whole game. You pay $60 for it, and that's the entire experience. They don't know that. They don't know a world where that actually existed. And it's sad. So, yeah, I guess people have grown accustomed to it because I guess they've just been used to it for so long that they're just compliant to it. But it's really causing some significant harm to the industry. I think as long as these loot boxes keep going, never mind the harm to the children, which is what you were getting at earlier about, they're fun and surprising for children, and it's a nice little thing. It's like getting a pack of trading cards, and it's like this. I think trading cards are honestly not good either. You're just wasting so much money into something that you're not sure you're going to get. Isn't that the whole definition of gambling? Although, I guess they could say, well, with trading cards and loot boxes, you don't actually get money, you don't actually gamble money and get a return. But really, it is fundamentally gambling, at its core, where the whole purpose of gambling is, a game of chance, right? It's, not knowing exactly what the outcome is going to be, but you're going to, You're gonna put money into something, hoping that you get a good return. And when it comes to loot boxes, that return is, that's that specific weapon that you want in Call of Duty. That is locked behind a loot box. Even if you paid $60 for the game, $50 for the DLC pass, and you still do not have the complete experience. $110 later, you still do not have the complete experience. $1,000 later, you might not have the complete experience, because that's the thing is, it's a game of chance. You don't know if you're actually going to get the stuff that you actually want. People are going to say, well, you don't have to put the money into it. Yes, instead of spending $1,000, you can spend 1,000 hours hoping to get that one item that you're probably never ever going to get. I remember I played Advanced Warfare back in the day. I've been playing that game for 5 years off and on, and I still have not obtained half of the weapons that are locked behind the loot boxes. So, yeah, I think government should be involved. I think loot boxes should not be accessible to these, because these children don't know any better, okay? And I don't mean to, say that as an insult to children, but the thing is, when you're a child, you do not understand what you're doing. You do not understand that you're blowing away money on something and not, you know what I mean? They think it's okay because, the excitement, the adrenaline rush of not knowing what you're going to get, and then you don't get it. So then you just, you keep putting those transactions on your parents' credit card, and I just don't see how people think this is okay. I've seen so many stories of children who, they don't know any better. That's the thing. You can say the children are stupid, but a lot of the times these are 5-year-old children who just press the wrong button on the iPad or whatever, and boom, their parent gets charged for $20, $50. You know what I mean? They just keep boom, 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 boom. You have these mobile games where they have it where it's I forget what game it actually was specifically, but mobile gaming is really where this stuff really took off, and it really started to get out of hand with these mobile games. I remember there's this little child game, like a game for toddlers where, you play a game, and then if you ran out of lives, the child, the child in the game would cry, and he would only get better if you bought more loot boxes and microtransactions. I kid you not, it's they're trying to reinforce. They know what they're doing. They're trying to psychologically exploit children. That's what EA, Activision, and all these other companies, that's what they're doing. They're exploiting children. Because everyone knows that children do not understand the concept. They don't even know, the concept of money as it stands already, right? So can you imagine them understanding, loot boxes and microtransactions and why that might actually be a problem? Never mind the parents' credit card and all that, but I'm just, the actual problem that actually has, it's an addiction. It's an addiction. If you keep putting money into something and not getting it, and you're just wasting your money away, no matter how old you are, that's an addiction. So we're socially reinforcing gambling addiction onto children. That's this thing that you people need to understand, right? People like to get caught up in these PR campaigns that these companies do, we're committed to fighting hate speech, and we're committed to promoting diversity, and all these wonderful, amazing things. And we care about making the world a better place, while simultaneously they're screwing over people, they're exploiting children, they're just, ethically, those two things just don't mix well together. Being ethical while simultaneously conducting business practices that are not ethical at all. I think it's a bubble that's about to burst. I think that if the video game industry keeps heading towards this direction where these investors and the people who put money into these big projects like Call of Duty and everything else, these big studio investors, there's going to be a situation where the video game industry, I'm not going to say it's going to crash, because that's a little bit extreme, but at the same time, there's gonna be some negative impact on the gaming industry. Battlefront 2 is gonna be exactly like a mobile game. EA was, and guess what? The people stood up. They were petitioning. They were organizing, and because they made such a huge uproar about what they were doing with Battlefront 2, they actually reversed course and changed their policy when it came to Battlefront 2. Now, Battlefront 2 is a fundamentally different game than it would have been if those predatory gambling practices were implemented. So people saying that, well, it's, there's no point in fighting it, there's no point in standing up to these companies. Battlefront 2 is the best example of how, yes, you can stand up to these companies, you can make a difference, you can vote with your wallet, but people just don't. It's too much effort to not buy a game, to boycott something, because it's FOMO, it's a fear of missing out. If I don't have that game that everyone else is playing, then I'm missing out on the experience. You know what I'm saying? So like we're continuously socially reinforcing the whole notion of, of not missing out, of being, being trendy and following trends. And if the trend is, to play these new games that everyone's playing that, have these microtransactions, and you can't. It's hard to make a stand when you kind of get socially punished for taking a stand, if that makes any sense. Like, if someone posts on Twitter, I'm gonna boycott this game, people are just gonna look at you like, okay, you fucking loser. Like, I'm just gonna play the game, and you cannot play it, whatever. It doesn't affect me, doesn't affect anyone. And it's also that whole thing where, like, well, if I don't buy the game, it's not gonna really make much of a difference, so I might as well buy the game, right? Because if one person boycotts the game, they lose out on $60 compared to the hundreds of millions of dollars they're making off of the microtransactions. It doesn't really pay. So people need to organize more. People in the gaming community, I think absolutely they need to organize more. And it's kind of like what I was saying earlier about how, like, I'm really, I have a very cynical view on the gaming community because they bitch and complain so much and do nothing about it. They talk about how much they want things to be different, but they do nothing to change it. So you kind of have to look at them and point and laugh, because just like, these people are just a joke. So that's my thoughts on loot boxes and microtransactions. I think, oh yeah, what I was getting at earlier, Black Ops 4 made $500 million in 3 days, if I'm not mistaken, which is a lot of money if you would think, but investors are not happy because they want to keep making more and more and more, make progressively more and more and more money. But the thing is, every industry, every market has its ups and downs, okay? And right now, we have this situation where the video game industry is just continuously going progressively higher and higher and higher and higher and higher in revenue. Like, I think the revenue of the video game industry is like double what it was 10 years ago. It's just continuously going up and up. But I feel like a lot of that is artificial because people are buying the microtransactions and they're putting their money into something that they're not really getting, like, fulfillment out of. And that's why the gaming industry is going to crash. This is not a sustainable business model, is what Balin says. Now, when it comes to a crash, like I said earlier, I feel like that's a little bit of an extreme word to use, crash. Because the video game industry, I'm not going to say it's too big to fail. Keep in mind, the video game crash, there were two video game crashes previously, right? You had the video game crash of 1977, in which you had it was just really an oversaturation of the market, where it was just Pong. Pong, Pong, Pong. Every console was Pong. Every arcade game was Pong. It was just ping pong, ping pong, ping pong. People were tired of that, so the video game industry crashed. And in 1983... it was, people talk about oversaturation, but it really, I'm going to make separate videos about the two crashes that we had, but I think it really doesn't have to do with, like, shitty games like E.T. or oversaturated consoles, because let's face it, people who grew up back then, you could ask people who grew up in the 70s and early 80s, most people didn't know what a Bally Astrocade was. Most people didn't know what a Fairchild Channel F was. Most people didn't know what, all these obscure consoles were. It was really the Atari 2600 and the Intellivision. Those are really, like, the two main consoles that were out. It's kind of like saying that the gaming industry was the console market was oversaturated in the mid-90s because you had the Super Nintendo, the Genesis, but you also had the 3DO. You also had the Commodore 64 GS, I think it was called. You had all these different consoles, and consumers were confused, and that's why the industry obviously did not crash in the 90s. So that whole logic kind of falls flat. So no, an oversaturated market did not kill the industry in '83. It was more of just a completely unsustainable gaming market where You sold the game to a retailer, so Sears was really the main one, but you also had all these J.C. Penney, these like these clothing stores, and these like these specific stores. They actually sold games back then because games were really viewed as the video game industry was like a new thing. One of the main problems is shareholders waiting more and more profit, wanting more and more profit every year. That's not going to be sustainable. That's exactly what I'm getting at. But at the same time, so with 83, what happened was that if you sold a game to a retailer, what would happen is that if you not sell all of it, all the game cartridges that were not sold, you had to buy back from the retailer. So can you imagine trying to make money off of a game if you had, like, let's say you sold 2 million units, which is 2 million copies of a game on Atari, which is pretty good, but you also had 500,000 unsold copies. You'd have to buy all those cartridges back, and you would lose a lot of money because making cartridges back then was expensive. So a lot of these companies, like Neversoft, I think was one of them. Not Neversoft; those are the people who make Guitar Hero. What was the name? Imagine, I think that was their name. Imagine. They were a huge third-party publisher, but they lost so much money because they lost so much money off of these unsold cartridges. So that's why, people talk about E.T. and all those other games. They really weren't commercially unsuccessful. They sold millions upon millions of copies. But because they had so much bulk cartridges, it's just that the entire industry was unsustainable, so it crashed. Now, the argument now is that, well, it's unsustainable as well because of loot boxes. 2 points to that. One, do you honestly think that EA, Activision, all these other companies are not going to try to find some other way to nickel and dime you to try to make some of that money back? Right? That's one point. They're really smart. They could start doing something like, instead of having loot boxes and microtransactions in every game, maybe instead you have like advertisements or something. Like you have to sit through video advertisements between games or something, something like that. Kind of like when you play those free games on the phone, where you just get banner ads and all these different ads all over the place. If they ban loot boxes, that might happen. And I know people are thinking, like, don't give them any ideas, but I think that's one thing. So the video game industry, they're gonna nickel and dime you and make money off of you as much as they can. Second point to that is that the video game industry is so much bigger than the AAA studios, okay? To the point where I think that if, let's say, EA went bankrupt or Activision went bankrupt or, one of those, a few of those big AAA companies, I feel like the video game industry still wouldn't crash. And even if it would crash, like, it would lose a lot more money than it had before. Would that really be a bad thing? Because the video game crash would only apply to those AAA studios. It really wouldn't apply to the rest of the industry, like the indie games. It really wouldn't apply to a lot of PC gaming, like these strategy games. Like depending on what type of gamer you are, you probably would never even see the effects of a video game crash anyway. So I think, the idea of the video game industry being too big to fail is kind of true because the video game industry is so diverse and so unique that even if one aspect of the industry completely collapsed, like the AAA gaming industry, I still think the industry would end up being fine. I still think it would be okay. Like, I don't think gloom and doom is the future of the video game industry. I think, it's definitely unsustainable, the current system right now, but if you're not really a big fan of those games anyway, like Call of Duty and Battlefield and all those AAA games, then a video game crash really wouldn't affect you that much anyway, because you're still gonna have Steam, you're still gonna have all that. I don't think it'll be a big deal. I don't think it would completely crash, but a lot of AAA companies will go bankrupt. Indie games are. Sorry, I missed your comment. I'm gonna try to pull that up. Yeah. Just joining. What's your thought? Is it good or bad? Future is bright. Final Fantasy HD remake. Breath of the Wild 2. So you missed it earlier. I was just saying, like, Breath of the Wild 2 is something to look forward to, but at the end of the day, like, we're probably not going to see it for another 2, 3, maybe 4 years. So getting all hyped about it right now is kind of a waste of time. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think of that. And then the Final Fantasy remake, as far as, like, okay, so remasters is another thing. the entire generation was oversaturated with remasters. Now they're kind of like going towards a new trend, which is remakes, which I like. So the Final Fantasy, not Final Fantasy, Resident Evil remake was awesome. Now they're remaking Final Fantasy VII, which I think is great. But these remasters is just it was a little bit too much because just they're selling the same game to you over and over again. But this is like the same game at its core, but reimagined in a modern setting, like with modern technology. I think it's great. I think that's absolutely great. That's like one of the bright spots about the video game industry, one of the innovative things. I think that's absolutely amazing. So I'm glad about remakes. I'm glad that's starting to become a little bit of a trend now. I'm looking forward to that. Remasters, though, I will never buy a remaster again as long as I live. I just don't. I have no interest. Even the SpongeBob remake, SpongeBob remaster, I already played the game before. Why do I want to buy it with shinier, prettier graphics? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just a waste of time, a waste of money. It's just a nostalgia trip. But I feel like with remakes, it's not just a nostalgia trip, but it's like it's also a nostalgia trip, but also a brand new experience. And new people who have never played those old games before would actually have a modern, brand new experience. So I like it. I like that whole idea of remakes, and I think that's a great thing. I think Final Fantasy VII has the potential to be one of the biggest games to the remake. I mean, one of the biggest games to have ever come out, one of the most innovative games to ever come out. So yeah, that's something to look forward to, actually. So what was I saying earlier? Oh, someone left a comment, and I meant to address it, but someone else left a comment, so I didn't finish it. Indie games are awesome, though, so we will be fine. Yeah, that's kind of like what I was saying earlier, that indie games, like the video game industry, is really too big. Not too big to fail, but it's so diverse that it's really not going to be the end of the world if, let's say, the video game industry loses a lot of revenue because EA and Activision can't make their loot box money. You know, they can't exploit children, make gambling addicts off of children. I don't think anyone's going to, no one's going to cry their eyes out over that. So I don't think there would really be another video game crash, but I think maybe a reorganization. Like the video game industry might fundamentally change, and we're starting to see a lot of that. And people are talking about streaming, but look, xCloud, I heard it's an unplayable mess. Even the people who played it through like a wired connection and everything, unplayable mess. Still got a lot of fine tuning to do with that. Stadia, I can't imagine people having a streaming service paying full price $60 for these games. It's just makes no sense to me. I can't imagine why anyone would want to do that. Pay full price $60 for games that you do not own. If the Stadia service shuts down, all of that money you put into those games, all the progress and all the money and everything, poof, gone. So I think they should really if streaming has a chance of ever being successful, that business model cannot be a thing. I guess like the streaming services are like way too expensive to manage for them to actually have like a monthly recurring subscription. You get access to all the games, but then again, Sony's able to do it with PlayStation Now, so maybe it's just Google being greedy. Google is always greedy, so what do you expect? Another thing that I was talking, so yeah, if you think they're they're gonna find other ways to make money, even if loot boxes are banned by the government or something like that. If they're classified as gambling, therefore making it illegal because there's no way to like verify that you're 18 or over, and if you can't verify, is it 18? I think it's 18, or is it? No, it's 21. So you have to verify that you're 21 or older to be able to buy a loot box. So loot boxes would effectively be gone. But we're still not sure if that's going to even happen. We're really way too optimistic about how effective and how representative government can actually be. Let's just remind ourselves of that. But forget all that. They're going to find another way to get money off of you. Whether it's the idea I suggested earlier about advertisements, like having to sit through advertisements while playing through a $60 game, like maybe like in between loading screens, you just have these advertisements. You have to sit through a 30-second ad in a waiting lobby of the game. Ads, banner ads all over the place. Maybe like actual advertisements will be in the actual game, so you have to so games will be always online. So like let's say the new Grand Theft Auto game, and it will be always online. And you can't even play single player because they have to keep updating the game to sell advertisements to you. like the billboards and everything will actually be real billboards for real companies, and the actual radio stations will be real advertisements, real radio. You think that's not going to happen? I mean, I hope it won't, but you think, like, I'm not even like a genius. Like, I'm not a marketing expert, and I already came out with a way for these publishers to make a shit ton of money off of you fools. That's one thing. Another thing is what we see with social media website data collection. You don't think they're gonna, if you put your full name and your PSN, for credit card, for billing purposes, you don't think they have that information down already? They're not. You don't think Sony, Microsoft, EA, Activision are potentially going to do what Facebook, Google, and all these other companies are doing, where they're actually selling your information to advertisers? Like those two things go hand in hand. Advertising and data collection. Your data is going to be theirs. Your data is going to belong to them. And they're just going to sell advertisements to you. They already do sell advertisements, but I think it's going to be like blown way out of proportion if loot boxes go away. They're going to have to find some way to recoup those losses if loot boxes do go away and become illegal. But again, that alone is a stretch, because you have a lot of lobbying. We know how lobbying is very influential on policy making. And you know how very unrepresentative of the people that Congress truly is. I know you have a lot of these small European countries that ban loot boxes, which, is good and all. But I think a big country like the United States, or even like the European Union, trade union, whatever call it, which has like monetary economic policy. If the European Union collectively bans loot boxes, that alone can kill it. Even like a big country like Japan, even if they ban loot boxes, that could be enough to kill loot boxes. I don't know. But the future of the gaming industry, the state of gaming in 2019 is definitely all over the place. I don't know what 2020 is going to hold. 2020... okay, I'm still live. My phone was trying to do an update. I'm sorry. Am I still live? Yes, I am. I'm going to end the stream soon too anyway, so, it is what it is. I've been sitting in a hot car for an hour and 17 minutes, so I'm going to have to go shopping. I'm starving, and I got to, get food and everything. So I'm going to wrap it up soon. But the state of gaming in 2019 is certainly interesting. I don't know what the future is going to hold. I like to make my predictions, all this stuff. I think there's going to be a lot of innovations, like I said just now, about remakes, about the new consoles, being potentially very innovative, the types of the type of processing power, backwards compatibility, and even forwards compatibility might be a potential new innovation that I talked about in one of my previous videos. So there's potential for a lot of innovation, a lot of good, memorable experiences. But I think there are certain things like loot boxes and all that really hold back the true potential, like the true artistic potential of video games, because you could tell they really they don't have to make a quality game. You know what I mean? Although I am hyped for playing older EA stuff like Mass Effect 2, Fallout New Vegas, Star Wars, Knights of the Republic, I am glad I am. Yeah. That's the thing, most of the games I play these days are, old games, because I don't have any fulfillment out of these new games. These like I said, it's like a full-time job, almost. Future 2019 is pretty bright. We also get Genesis Classic, and yeah. I don't know. I don't really care about those flashback consoles. I don't see why you can't just have the original console. I guess people like the HDMI capabilities. I don't even know if the new Genesis Mini has HDMI, but that's, really the one big thing that people like having about, re-released versions of old consoles, and also having 50 games bundled at once instead of having to buy them separately on eBay. There's also another thing called emulation, which is a little bit controversial, but if you're really into retro gaming, it's a very cheap, literally it's free actually. It's a free way to play classic games and not have to shell out money on it at all. To spend thousands of dollars on eBay, or even spending $50 on a classic console that you're probably gonna never play. It's beyond a novelty. It's a novelty toy. That's the thing about these flashback consoles. I don't think that's anything really to look forward to too much. But I think there's certain things to look forward to. I actually never mentioned Cyberpunk in this video, but I think 2020, 2021 has the potential to make or break the gaming industry. I think the consoles, the new consoles, even in the Xbox and everything, I think they have potential to do very well. And I think PC gaming is also going to do well. And overall, I think that there's a lot to look forward to. Mass Effect Andromeda wasn't as bad as people portrayed it to be. Please don't hate me, guys. I agree with you. I actually made a video not too like a few years ago saying that Mass Effect Andromeda, before people were, before Anthem came out, even I was saying Andromeda wasn't as bad as people said it was. But at the same time, is that us saying that the game was good and deserves like more credit, or maybe we're just so used to mediocrity that Mass Effect Andromeda is considered like a 9 out of 10 masterpiece compared to games like Anthem? You know what I mean? Because at least Mass Effect Andromeda is a single player experience, and you get everything that you get out of the game. You pay $60, at least you get everything, even if like what you actually get is just a buggy, broken mess and is nothing compared to the original Mass Effect trilogy. But the bar is set lower and lower and lower and lower that we think games like Mass Effect Andromeda are so great. I guess that's just the state of the gaming in a nutshell, and it's a good way to end the stream out. Here's the thing. I don't know when I'm going to be able to do a stream ever again because my capabilities of streaming is so bad. I really only do live streams once a year, so potentially if you want to see me live, you might have to wait until next year. So if you have anything you want to ask me live, if you want to have the chance to, now's the chance. I'm going to take the next few minutes to do that, and then I'm going to sign out. Buy the SNES controller connected to PC and play it on emulator. Yeah, that's, I'm going to be honest, that's exactly what I do. Even PlayStation 2 games. I have a PCSX2, I think, is the emulator. And that's really how I mainly play my PS2 games, although a lot of them don't run very well, and it's still a buggy mess. So modern emulation, like emulation for games that came out like the 6th generation and later are very tricky. But when it comes to like really retro games like Atari, Sega, old school Nintendo, actually Nintendo consoles are fairly easy to emulate. I think the Dolphin emulator works like perfect. But I don't know. I just don't see the point in having these flashback consoles. I don't know. Is there anything else anyone wants to ask me? Because I am sweating to death. I feel like I'm going to pass out. I still have to go grocery shopping and do all that stuff. So if you have any other questions you want to ask me before I tune out of the stream, let me know. Because this is going to be the last you're going to see me live for quite a long time. Like, I have one question. Can you say Generation 7 have the best AAA games? Generation 7, does the 7th generation have the best AAA games? I would say, you know what? I would say yes. You had so many games. You had Mass Effect Trilogy. You had Dead Space. Even EA, like they were doing some pretty shitty things, like online. They had online passes if you didn't buy the full game, like new instead of used. They did have the on-disc DLC for a certain number of games, but I think 2009, 2010 were like the best years of gaming. AAA games were like, just like, there were so many games to I remember E3 2010. I would tune into G4, the channel G4, which is like now, I think, Esquire Network, whatever the hell that's supposed to be. G4 was a gaming channel where they would have nonstop E3 coverage the entire day. I would have a notebook like the one I have right now, and I would write down all the games that I would see on TV, and I would have a list of all the games. And then I would like have to decide like by Christmas, because back then we're like the only time to be able to buy games is Christmas, when my parents gave me presents for Christmas. I'd have to like cross out certain games because I wanted, like, there were 20 games that I had to choose. There were so many amazing games that were coming out back then, AAA games. Now it's like very underwhelming. Even first party games, like the PlayStation games, they all feel like the same. They're all third party action games. Not third party, third person action games like Spider-Man, God of War, Last of Us. They're all like very similar to each other. They all kind of feel like the same game, almost. Like the narrative experience is completely different and all that. Like the immersion is kind of different. But like the actual like gameplay experience is very similar. Like they're all very similar to each other. But back then, with the PlayStation 3, man, you had Little Big Planet. You had all these first-person shooter games. On the PlayStation, you had Mag, which is like a 256-player game. You had all these different games, Killzone. Now you just have the same games over and over again. Like you have all these third-person action games, and that's it. And yeah, I do think that the seventh generation is the best gaming generation. That's my opinion. Because you had the best, probably one of the best console competitions between the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. Probably like rivals that of the Genesis and the Super Nintendo back in the day. But that's like the best console war ever, because you had two consoles that came out with incredible first party experiences, great third party support. It's just amazing, right? But I feel like the eighth generation was very underwhelming. I think the sixth generation was very good, but I still think the seventh generation was a little bit better, because you had the benefits of online gaming before you actually had the real drawbacks to it. It's like now, like online gaming is like taking on its life of its own. Back then, you'd buy a game like Call of Duty for $60, but it would also have a single player experience. It would have all this other stuff, but it would also have online multiplayer, and you'd get a lot of longevity out of those games. But it was another addition to it. Now you have like online only games, you have single player only games, and like the online games that you do play, they're not as fulfilling as the games were in the seventh generation. So like I feel like the gaming industry has really gone, like, in terms of like actual artistic quality, has objectively speaking gone down significantly. Because even if you can argue that there are a lot of like games that are like complete masterpieces, like Zelda Breath of the Wild and God of War, so on and so forth, the actual quantity of high quality games were significantly higher than this current generation. And I'm not saying God of War is bad. No, man. I'm not saying God of War is bad. I'm just saying that God of War and all these other games are just like on the PlayStation 4, like too similar. They're the same genre as each other. They're great games, but like I want some more genre variety. They even tried to like come out with a fighting game. Remember PlayStation Battle Royale? I know people didn't like that game. They tried too hard to copy Smash. They probably would have been better off coming out with like a Naruto style 3D fighter game to just differentiate itself. That's the thing. Like, they could have done a little bit better with the seventh generation. Admittedly, like, seventh generation might have been the best generation, but it certainly wasn't the perfect generation. But all these amazing games, like different types of games, are like almost non-existent now. Like these entire genres, there's no such thing as an FPS exclusive on the PlayStation 4, unless you want to count the VR. And VR is another thing that's kind of starting to take off. So, I don't know what to think about VR. I think the Oculus Quest, that's the one with no wires. I think that's the future. I think that's the only way that VR can really like take off, because I think like VR being like having to have a console or a PC, that's really gonna hold VR back. As long as you need like a really powerful PC, because that already is a niche thing, and then on top of that, a VR headset is another niche product. So like, yeah, they need to have like the Oculus Quest needs to be the future, where it's just the VR headset it's its own entity, it's its own thing, where you put the goggles on or whatever, and you don't have any outside wires. It's just what you get in the box is the only thing you need. I think that's the way VR needs to be in order to actually be a huge force to be reckoned with in the future. Anyway, I think that I pretty much covered everything that needs to be covered. I've been going on for an hour and a half now, and I need to get going. So thanks to all of you for tuning into the stream. I had some fairly decent turnout. I mean, towards the first half hour, nobody was watching, and then after that, people were starting to tune in. So thank you for all who are watching, and there's some things to look forward to for the future of this channel. Like I said earlier, this is potentially the last video you'll see on this channel as One Up Chuck. There's going to be a rebranding and a new name. Kingdom Hearts 3, I heard it's JRPG on PlayStation 4. Kingdom Hearts 3? Wait, Kingdom Hearts 3? Didn't Kingdom Hearts 3 already come out? That's, my friend played it. I didn't really play it too much, because I played the first Kingdom Hearts, and I didn't really like it that much, you know what I mean? When I was a kid, I liked it a little bit, but then I'm like, I'm not really a Kingdom Hearts person. those types of games are not really my thing. But if you like it, that's great. From what my best friend is like a Kingdom Hearts die-hard fan. He claims that Kingdom Hearts 3 is the worst game of the series. He says that game was rushed, which I find very interesting because it took him, what, 10 years to come out with a new game in Kingdom Hearts. But I heard like they made a new engine, they did all that stuff. I am not subscribed. I will subscribe and wait for a new video. Thank you very much for subscribing. I really appreciate that very much. Yeah, if you're really into like video game history and just the stuff that I'm doing right now, like just talking about video games and just speculating and just, you know, probably spending way too much time analyzing and talking about a trivial topic like video games. If you're into that kind of stuff, then subscribe to the channel. I like, you know, I do video game discussions and all that. Yeah, if you're into history, the next video, the first video that will be made under my new channel overhaul. So if you don't recognize the name, it will be my new name. I haven't come out with a new name yet, but One Up Chuck will not be my name for long. Stay tuned for a video titled the World's First Video Game, which came out in 1950. So yeah, that's something that not a lot of people are aware of, that the first video game actually came out almost 70 years ago, which is like, mind-blowing. But I'm going to do a little documentary history type thing on that, so I appreciate that you subscribe. I hope you like it. So that's about it. Yeah, that's the 2019 State of Gaming. Stay tuned for 12 months from now when we take a look at the 2020 State of Gaming. By then, I'm sure we'll have a lot of details on the PlayStation 5 and the next Xbox console, and maybe Nintendo might have a few tricks up their sleeves as well. So we'll see how different the conversation might be a year from now. And yeah, so thank you for watching,